Go for it.
So you got the driver's side fuel door area. Overall, want to make sure there's no leaks from the DEF tank, no leaks from the diesel tank. I don't smell any leaks. I don't smell any diesel. I don't see any leaks. Look at my fairing at the top, make sure there's no missing hardware, it's not loose, no holes in it. Make sure the side of the fairing isn't loose. I'm going to check my rear view mirror, making sure it's properly mounted, all the hardware is present. Make sure the mirror doesn't have any cracks, no illegal stickers, no obstructions. Check my door, making sure my door handle's working, it closes and opens properly. I'm going to check my hinges, make sure the hinges aren't loose. I'm going to check my window, making sure it rolls up and down properly. Making sure that the window isn't cracked or missing. No illegal stickers. No cracks or chips. Check the weather stripping all the way around, making sure the weather stripping is good. So no outside air can get inside. I'm going to check the seat belt. Make sure the seat belt isn't cracked or frayed. It's properly mounted. Check the grab handle. Make sure it's not loose. We'll look at the floor of the cab, making sure there's no obstructions in the floor of the cab, nothing that'll roll around and get underneath the pedals that'll affect the safe operation of the vehicle. We'll also check my electrical disconnect switch. The low disconnect switch can be cut off in the event of an emergency. Over there, I have my red emergency box. Inside my red emergency box, I have a 5 BC rated fire extinguisher, making sure that it's fully charged in the green with a pin inserted. I have 3 red reflective triangles and 6 spare fuses. Okay. Have my brand, my logo right here, my DOT sticker properly displayed. Got my HIPTA sticker, making sure it's in date. My DEF tank is properly mounted, it's not loose, it's not leaking any DEF. Make sure the cap is tight, connected with the lanyard. I'll check my fuel tank, making sure the fuel tank doesn't have any mirroring between the fuel straps. Make sure that there's a rubber band between the strap and the fuel tank, so there's no metal to contact, which could possibly cause a leak over time. Check the fuel cap, making sure that the fuel cap has a rubber grommet in it, connected to the chain, making sure the fuel cap is tight. Check the electrical wires, making sure the electrical wires are properly connected to the sides of arcing. Make sure there's no leaking on the fuel line at the top. Make sure the steps are properly mounted, they're not loose. There's no dirt, oil, or grease on the steps that would create a fall hazard. Check the rear of the cab. Got the top of the fairing. Make sure there's no holes. The fairing isn't loose. Make sure the cross members are properly installed. No missing hardware. I have 4 clear reflectors in the corners of the back of the cab. I have the rear glass on the cab. I want to make sure that the glass doesn't have any no legal stickers, no instructions. Make sure that the glass isn't cracked or damaged. I also have my spring bar and my springs holding on my electrical lines and my air lines off the catwalk. Making sure that it's properly mounted, it's not loose, no missing hardware. Got my grab handle, making sure my grab handle isn't loose. I have my 2 clear hookup lights, making sure there's no moisture, it's not cracked or broken. I got my shock absorbers probably connected with the frame and the cab of the tractor, making sure there's no oil coming from the shock absorbers that indicate the shocks are damaged. My airbags aren't cut, no signs of audible leaks, no bulging, no dry rot, probably mounted to the cross member. Cross member isn't bent, broken, or twisted, all the hardware is present. Look at the rear of the transmission, making sure there's no transmission fluid leaking off the back of the transmission. Got my drive shaft coming out of the rear of the transmission. I got my U-joints in my drive shaft. Make sure that they're not damaged. Make sure the drive shaft isn't dented or broken, or hanging or missing. Also have my rear drive shaft. Make sure it's not damaged or broken. Got the 2 U-joints on the rear drive shaft. They're not damaged or broken. Got my steps. Make sure that my steps are properly mounted. There's no dirt, oil, or grease that will create a fall hazard. Underneath my steps, I have my battery box. We check before we arrive, making sure all the clamps are tight, no corrosion, no signs of arcing or bare wires. I don't smell any malodorous air that would indicate that the batteries are going bad. Got my frame, making sure my frame isn't bent, broken, or twisted. No illegal wheels, no illegal drill marks. Got my steps that are properly mounted to the frame. They're not loose. No dirt, oil, or grease on the steps that would create a hazard. My air tanks are properly mounted to the frame. No signs of, I don't hear any leaks. All the air lines are properly fastened. There's no crimped air lines. This is where I drain my air tanks. Okay. Okay, now I got the mud flap, which are properly mounted to the frame. The mud flap isn't loose. The bracket isn't loose. The mud flap isn't damaged or missing. I got my front control arm hanger, control arm and torsion arm.
I think it's your control arm.
Control arm. Control arm isn't bent or broken. It's connected to my axle with 2 U-bolts and 4 nuts. Got a shock absorber behind it, making sure that the shock absorber isn't leaking any oil. The shock is probably mounted to the frame and the control arm. The rear control arm hanger is an airbag. The airbag isn't cut, no audible leaks, and it's not no signs of bulges from the frame. Okay. I'm gonna have my air lines over here coming from the frame and my air tanks to the brake chamber. Make sure that the brake chamber down there is properly mounted with a C-clamp. Out of the brake chamber, I want to make sure it's not dented or broken. Out of the brake chamber, I have a push rod. The push rod is connected to the slack adjuster with a cotter pin and a key. Slack adjuster has to be at a 90-degree angle when the brakes are applied, no more than 1 inch of plate when the brakes are released. I got my S-cam going into my brakes. The linings of the brake shoes, making sure they're not, they have at least a 1/4 inch of pad or lining left. Make sure they're not oil soaked, indicate an inner hub seal leak. Now I'll want to look at my brake drum, making sure my brake drum isn't blue from overheating, it's not cracked. There's no oil dripping off of it, to indicate an inner hub seal leak. Check the inside of the rim, make sure the inside of the rim doesn't have any abrasions, bumps, or cuts. Make good contact with the tire bead all the way around. Check the inside of the inside tire wall. Make sure there's no abrasions, bumps, or cuts. The tread's not separating. Check the top of the tread, making sure the tread is wearing evenly. Have to have at least 2/32 of tread depth. Can be a recap tire. Check the inside tire wall. Make sure the inside tire wall doesn't have any abrasions, bumps, or cuts. Making sure that it's making good contact with the rim all the way around. I'm going to check the inside of this rim, making sure there's no illegal welds or any drill marks. Got a valve stem and cap on it. Make sure the valve stem is not loose and the cap is tight. It's at 100 psi. Check the gauge. This is a butted rim, so I want to make sure I don't have any daylight between the 2 rims. I also want to make sure I don't have any obstructions between the tires. I'm going to check the inside rim on the outside tire. Make sure there's no illegal welds, no drill marks. Make sure that the tire bead is fastened all the way around. Check the inside of the outside tire. Check to make sure there's no abrasions, bumps, or cuts. Make sure the tread's not separating. Check the top of the tread. Making sure that the tread's wearing evenly. 2/32 of tread depth can cab tire. Make sure there's no obstructions inside the top of either tire. Nothing embedded in it. Check the tire tread, making sure the tread is not separating from the tire wall. Check the outside tire wall, making sure there's no abrasions, bumps, or cuts. Making good contact with the tire bead from the rim all the way around. Make sure there's no illegal welds, no drill marks on the rim. I want to check the lug nuts. Make sure all the lug nuts are tight. No spider cracking to indicate over tightening. No rust trails that indicate looseness. I want to check my axle seal. Make sure my axle seal isn't leaking any axle oil. Make sure all the nuts are tight. Then I want to check my valve stem. Make sure my valve stem isn't loose. It's not leaking. Make sure that I have a cap. The cap is tightened down and it's at 100 psi. Check with the gauge. At the rear of the tractor, I have my mud flap right here, spring loaded. Got my red and white DOT tape. The mud flap is cracked or broken or hanging, not missing. Rear of the tractor, make sure my lock jaws are properly locked around the kingpin. Check the cross members, make sure the cross members aren't bent. We'll look at the frame, making sure the frame isn't bent, broken, or twisted. Check my rear cross member, making sure all the hardware is present. It's not dented or broken, not twisted. The two red reflectors, not on the cross member. I got my clear reverse light, making sure there's no signs of moisture. It's not cracked or broken. Look at my rear red tail lights, making sure that they're red in color. They're not cracked, no moisture getting inside. They act as my four-ways, turn signals, brake lights, and running lights. Now my coupling system. Make sure my air lines come from the back of the cab are properly mounted. No signs of audible leaks, no cuts, no crimps, no bulges. My electrical line is properly connected to the cab. No bare wires, no signs of arcing. Properly connected to my spring arm and my springs. Make sure the lines aren't crossed. They're properly connected to the rear of the cab. I have my emergency line. Make sure the rubber isn't dry rotted. It's not missing. There's no obstruction. And it's properly secured. Check my electrical line. Make sure my electrical line. There's no obstructions. None of the pins are pushed in. Properly connected and secured. Check my supply side. Make sure that the rubber and the supply side isn't cut. It's not dry rotted. It's not missing. It's properly secured. Check the lines going down underneath the trailer apron, making sure there's no exposed wires. Check the trailer apron, making sure that it's not damaged. I want to make sure that my fifth wheel is properly greased. Make sure there's no daylight between the apron and the fifth wheel. Check to make sure that my locking bolt is in the lock position and my release handle is in the lock position. Check my saddle pin and my saddle nut, making sure that they're secured in the lock position. I'm going to check my fifth wheel mount, making sure that it's properly mounted to my slider. None of the teeth are missing on the slider. The sliding fifth wheel has been permanently engaged, cannot be adjusted. Check my slider, look at the welds, make sure that it's properly welded to the platform. I don't have any cracked or broken welds. I want to look at my cross members, making sure the cross members are properly welded. I don't have any cracked or missing welds, and the cross members aren't bent. The platform is properly mounted to an L bracket. All of the nuts and bolts are present. I don't have any loose hardware. Make sure my L bracket is properly bolted to my frame. I don't have any loose or missing hardware. I want to make sure my locking jaws are properly locked around my fifth wheel, and make sure my locking jaws are properly latched around my kingpin. They're not in the open position. I want to check again my cross members, making sure the cross members aren't bent or broken. I want to check the K-brace, and landing gear. Making sure the K-brace doesn't have any loose or missing hardware. Check my sand shoes and making sure they're not missing hardware. This is where I crank, making sure that my crank is properly mounted. And this is where it would go up and down.